Letitia James, accused. A relentless prosecutor faces her own reckoning. Letitia James built her career on rooting out corruption. As New York's Attorney General, she's earned a national reputation and headlines by taking on powerful figures, none bigger than former President Donald Trump. From sweeping civil suits to criminal referrals, she has styled herself as a relentless force for justice, unafraid to challenge the wealthy, the well-connected, or the politically untouchable. But now, in a stunning twist of irony, the woman who made accountability her brand finds herself at the center of a growing scandal, one that threatens the very credibility she spent years cultivating. Accusations of mortgage fraud have surfaced, and if proven true, they would not only dismantle her political standing, but expose a staggering level of hypocrisy. And how has she responded? With one word: baseless. Asterisk, asterisk again and again, James has appeared at press events, in interviews, and on television, repeating the phrase like a legal shield. These allegations are baseless, she says, her delivery cold and rehearsed, a wall of controlled legal jargon meant to shut down inquiry. But here's what's unsettling. She never says she's innocent. Not once does she look into the camera and say the 5 words any wrongfully accused person might eagerly declare: I didn't do it. She doesn't deny the core allegations. She doesn't offer documentation, witnesses, or specifics. Instead, she leans on vague generalities, terminology that seems designed to create ambiguity, without actually addressing the truth. For someone who has built her legacy on transparency and moral clarity, her evasiveness is deafening. So what exactly are the allegations that she's so determined to dodge? According to investigative reports, James is facing 3 serious accusations, each involving fraudulent or misleading statements in mortgage documents. The first concerns a misrepresentation of the size and structure of a property she owns. She allegedly claimed the building had 4 residential units, when it actually had 5. To the average observer, that may sound like a trivial oversight, but in the world of real estate, zoning, and lending, the number of units can significantly affect mortgage terms, tax obligations, and legal usage. If deliberate, it wouldn't be a clerical error. It would be a calculated move to gain more favorable financing. The second allegation is even more troubling. James is accused of claiming residency in the state of Virginia, despite being the sitting Attorney General of New York. Why would she do this? Because mortgage rates, insurance policies, and tax conditions vary dramatically based on a person's declared primary residence. If she falsely claimed to live in Virginia, she could have secured financial advantages she wasn't entitled to. But more than a technical violation, such an action, if proven, would raise serious questions about her fitness for office and her ethical judgment. Then comes the third allegation, arguably the most bizarre. James is accused of listing her own father as her husband on an official mortgage application. This isn't a minor typo or a computer glitch. It's a glaring falsehood, one with no apparent explanation unless it was intended to bolster the application by misrepresenting a dual-income household or increasing financial credibility. It's the kind of misstatement that would trigger scrutiny for any applicant, let alone a top law enforcement officer. Individually, each of these claims is concerning. Taken together, they paint a picture of someone who may have manipulated the system for personal gain, while holding others to strict legal and ethical standards. And that is the crux of the issue. If these allegations are truly baseless, as James insists, then why not disprove them with facts? Why not come forward with clear records, explanations, and evidence? Why not directly refute the claims rather than hide behind lawyerly deflections? Her silence grows louder by the day. And so, do the questions. These aren't minor paperwork errors. They're not the sort of clerical issues resolved with a form correction and an apology. These are serious, substantive allegations of misrepresentation, falsehoods on legal documents that, if true, would constitute mortgage fraud. And not just any fraud, the very kind Letitia James has spent her entire public career prosecuting and others. For years, James has taken landlords, lenders, corporations, and public officials to court for the same type of deception now attributed to her. She's condemned these acts in front of cameras and behind courtroom lecterns, arguing that fraud, especially by the powerful, must be punished to protect public trust. And yet, now that the spotlight is turned on her, she refuses to engage with the scrutiny she has long demanded of others. Instead, she offers platitudes. She promises the public that she will respond at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way. But the accusations are already public. The documents have been reviewed. The timeline is out in the open. And that appropriate time never seems to come. Headlines multiply. The pressure builds. And still, she repeats her only line. Baseless. Asterisk, asterisk to grasp how suspicious this sounds. Consider a simple analogy. Imagine you're accused of a serious crime, say, armed robbery. You're innocent. You weren't there. You had nothing to do with it. Would your only response be, "These charges are baseless"? Of course not. You'd shout your innocence. You'd release surveillance footage, produce witnesses, offer alibis. You'd take every opportunity to set the record straight, not just for yourself, but for your family, your community, and your legacy. Letitia James does none of that. She doesn't call the allegations false. She doesn't demand a correction. She doesn't even acknowledge the underlying facts. Instead, she leans into a strategy of legal obfuscation, language designed to stall rather than clarify, a tactic engineered to cast doubt on procedure without touching the truth, and that, perhaps, is the most revealing behavior of all. For someone who has made a name by demanding that others answer hard questions, her refusal to answer any herself is a staggering reversal, and the longer she remains silent on the specifics, the more damning that silence becomes. Letitia James once stood as a symbol of accountability. Now, she risks becoming its contradiction. There's a reason Letitia James keeps using the word asterisk baseless. Asterisk, it's not a moral declaration. It's a legal strategy. In the language of courtrooms and legal filings, calling an accusation baseless doesn't mean it's false. It doesn't mean the alleged action didn't happen. It simply means the evidence might not meet the legal threshold to support prosecution. It means the case may not be strong enough to pursue, not that the underlying claims are untrue. That's a massive distinction, and one that's deeply calculated, especially coming from someone who has spent decades parsing the language of law. Letitia James knows exactly what she's saying, and more importantly, what she's deliberately avoiding. When pressed about the swirling mortgage fraud allegations against her, James doesn't directly confront the claims. Instead, she pivots away from facts and toward motive. She paints the accusations as nothing more than a political hit job, a smear campaign orchestrated by right-wing operatives, Trump loyalists, and MAGA Republicans desperate to discredit her. It's a familiar tactic in today's polarized political climate. Cast yourself as a victim, rally your base, and hope that tribal loyalty outshines factual scrutiny. But in this case, that defense doesn't hold up under even the most basic inspection, because a man who uncovered the inconsistencies in Letitia James's mortgage paperwork isn't a Republican operative. He's not a cable news pundit. He's not affiliated with the Trump campaign or some dark money conservative group. His name is Sam Anter, a forensic accountant. And not just any accountant. Anter is known for his role in the infamous Crazy Eddie fraud scandal of the 1980s, a scheme in which he was a chief financial officer before ultimately turning whistleblower. Since then, Anter has spent decades exposing corporate and financial fraud with surgical precision. He's a registered Democrat, vocal about his support for liberal causes, and has no known agenda to boost Donald Trump or tear down the left. Anter didn't target Letitia James out of political animus. In fact, he didn't set out to investigate her at all. According to his own statements, he stumbled upon her case while combing through real estate records for multiple politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike. James, he says, was simply another name on a long list. But what he found stopped him cold. The documents showed troubling inconsistencies, patterns of misrepresentation that pointed not to clerical errors, but at what appeared to be a deliberate manipulation of mortgage documents. Anders saw red flags. Discrepancies in unit counts, questionable residency declarations, and outright false information in official filings. This wasn't a one-off mistake. It suggested a pattern of calculated deception. When Anna brought his findings to light, James didn't engage with the substance. Instead, she tried to discredit the source. She labeled the revelations as a partisan hit job, asterisk, asterisk, ignoring the glaring reality, asterisk, asterisk, that they came from a fraud expert with no partisan axe to grind. And here is where James's story begins to unravel. Attacking the messenger won't erase the message. When asked directly about the allegations, James grows defensive. She doesn't provide proof or explanations. She doesn't release corrected documents. Instead, she implies that being compared to Donald Trump is an insult in itself. Asterisk, I should be held to the same standard as Donald Trump? Asterisk, she asked, incredulously. It's as though she cannot fathom the possibility that the law applies to her in the same way she insisted applies to others. And that's where this scandal begins to shift, from a question of paperwork to a question of character. Because Letitia James didn't just run on ethics and integrity. She built her career on them. She became a national figure by proclaiming that no one is above the law. She launched aggressive legal action against Trump, accusing him of inflating the value of his assets to secure better loan terms, evade taxes, and manipulate insurance policies. She used detailed financial forensics and fraud statutes to make that case. And yet now, when the same accusations are directed at her, exaggerating property details, misrepresenting residency, and falsifying family relationships for mortgage benefits, her posture shifts entirely. The moral certainty is gone. The prosecutorial clarity disappears. All that remains is the word baseless. Let's examine the central point. If these allegations truly are baseless, why not prove it? Why not publish the original mortgage documents? Why not show the correct unit count, the real residency status, and clarify the bizarre listing of her father as her husband? If this is a political smear, the strongest offense would be the truth itself. And yet, James refuses to deny the specific facts. Not once. That silence is more revealing than any courtroom testimony. Because the problem isn't just the alleged fraud, it's who she is. Letitia James is not a minor functionary. She's not a bureaucrat buried in a state agency. She is a top law enforcement official in one of the most powerful states in America. If the allegations are true, she hasn't just skirted the law. Asterisk, asterisk, she betrayed the public trust. Asterisk, asterisk, she was elected to defend. This isn't about whether someone fudged a form. It's about whether those who enforce the law believe they are above it. And there's another, more unsettling layer. James has recently begun invoking religious language in public appearances. In interviews, she said things like, faith and fear can't share the same space, and asterisk, I'm covered by the blood. Nothing formed against me shall prosper. Asterisk, these aren't the words of a public servant offering evidence or explanation. They're the words of someone casting themselves as a martyr, cloaking legal scrutiny in spiritual persecution. It's not accountability. It's theater. And that's perhaps the most dangerous development of all. Because when those tasked with enforcing the law begin acting like they're above it, when prosecutors transform into preachers and shield themselves with emotion instead of facts, we lose the clarity that justice requires. The law becomes a matter of loyalty, not evidence. Truth gives way to narrative. Transparency is sacrificed for political survival. Letitia James may believe that repeating baseless over and over will make the controversy disappear. But the public deserves more than rehearsed lines and evasive press conferences. We deserve answers. We deserve transparency. And most of all, we deserve accountability from everyone, regardless of party or power. If the allegations against Letitia James are false, she should say so plainly and back it up with evidence. If they're true, she must face the consequences with the same rigor she's demanded from others. Because at stake here is not just the reputation of one public official, but the integrity of the very institution she swore to uphold. Letitia James once declared that no one is above the law. Now we must find out if she meant it. Because if these allegations prove true, the real question isn't whether she should be held accountable. It's whether we as a nation still have the courage to do it. The justice system cannot afford selective prosecution. It cannot withstand double standards. And it cannot survive when those in power refuse to answer the questions they once demanded of others. Whether it's Donald Trump or Letitia James, the principle must remain the same. Let the facts speak louder than the politics. And let the law, at long last, be blind.